Hi, I'm Ron Platt, and I am the co-founder of the National Association for Single and Divorced Families. We provide products, services, support, and resources for people who are in the process of getting a divorce, currently divorced, or have a single-family household. We are here today with Gianmarco. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Gianmarco. Yeah, it looks a lot more intimidating than it sounds. Yeah.
You are a soon-to-be newly divorced
Yes.
father, and I wanted to make sure that we have a lot of fathers on here talking about their relationship with their children, what it was like for them to go through a divorce, what resources they had, and what kind of support they need.
Yeah.
So that we can continue building our resources for single dads as well. So tell me a little bit about what you do.
Sure. I am the editor of a magazine called Bowler's Journal International.
Okay.
It's a sports magazine that has a niche audience of bowling, serves the bowling industry, and has done so since 1913, which makes it the oldest monthly sports magazine in the country, believe it or not.
Wow.
I've done that for 11 years now.
Okay.
Had a bowling pass as a kid, then gravitated toward reading and writing later on, got an MFA at the New School in New York City in creative writing with a concentration in poetry. Not a lot of poetry in the magazine, I must say, which I'm sure folks find shocking, but a whole lot of storytelling.
Although it could be funny to make some...
It could. Don't tempt me. I might have to pitch that to my publisher. Yeah.
And then you, so you write for the magazine.
Yeah, I do a lot for the magazine. As the editor, I do a great deal of writing, long-form features, and from everything from long-form features to smaller monthly departments. I do a lot of interviews, and in addition to that, all the editor stuff, right? So editorial calendars, schedules, assigning things out to writers, supervising writers, making sure the thing gets to the printer on time every month. So yeah, there's a lot of hats that I wear in a position like this.
I love the fact that before we started speaking on our podcast is that you mentioned that you had a passion for bowling and a passion for writing, and you've managed to convert the two together.
Right.
And you're living your passion. I love it.
Yes, it is true. It is true. It is possible. I'm living proof.
Love it. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your relationship with your soon-to-be ex-wife.
Yeah.
How did all that start?
Well, we met at USF Tampa, and we were together as a couple, relationship pre-marriage plus marriage for 18 years. So quite a, I mean, almost half my life. And right now, you know, I'm quite grateful that once we established an important ground rule, which was our communication needs to be driven by the children's needs. I have a 5-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old daughter who is probably going to be 21 in a few days. Just ask her, she'll tell you all about that.
The fun age.
Yeah.
11.
Oh, yeah. It's fun is one way of putting it. There might be some more adventurous synonyms for that we could discuss later. It has been, once we established this ground whereby we understood that our communication was going to be exclusively driven by the children's needs and what we can do together to fulfill those needs.
Right.
That's going really well. We stripped the dynamic of all drama and you know, trauma and all the things that were ignited in the throes of our marriage's death, and we're driven by the children now.
Excellent.
And that kind of sole focus, that direction in our dynamic as co-parents now has gone, I think, exceptionally well, and I'm really grateful for that.
Did you have arguments in front of the kids? Or how did you manage that whole situation?
You know, it's interesting. Our divorce did not end with that kind of tumult. We weren't at each other's throats. We're not at each other's throats now. There weren't screaming contests. It was it might be a conversation for another day, but suffice it to say that there was an immense amount of trauma with which our marriage came to an end that we sought to protect our children from. Did we do a great job of it? They might have overheard a conversation or two. Children are smarter than we give them credit for, and they're always listening. Yeah. You know, so it wasn't arguments in front of them. It was, however, and I was just talking with someone about this the other day, because looking back at something that bothers me and something that I'm glad to be rid of in my dynamic with my children now, which is the circumstances that brought our marriage to an end were so emotionally and psychologically trying that there were many nights when my then wife and I would be wrapped up in intense hushed tone conversations, trying to find our way through this. And one or both daughters would come into the kitchen looking for attention, and we just didn't have it to give them at the time.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, Ron, there were times when I feel like I shooed them away, and I don't like that. Yeah.
It's all right. You have to have a separate fund for therapy when they get
That's right.
Just add a few more dollars into the therapy fund.
That's right.
Look, I think that we think as parents that we have to be perfect all the time.
Right.
And we're individuals. We are human beings. We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And as much as we try to be perfect for our kids, we're going to screw up somehow.
100%.
And I think that if the kids acknowledge or see the fact that their parents aren't perfect, it's okay. Right? I'd be nervous if I ran into a kid that said, "Oh, my parents don't fight. They don't. They're just perfect." They're going to be like, "Really? Like, what vortex are you living in?" And I think it trains them to be better parents or better spouses when they get older. I know that my upbringing was interesting. There was a lot of physical abuse as far as disciplining and stuff like that. And my sister and I made a commitment that when we had children someday, we were not going to repeat that. I remember one time when my dad said, "Do you want me to be as bad as your uncle?" And we both said, "No, don't be as bad as it." But then I thought to myself later as I grew up, so he saw how bad my uncle was and didn't make the connection that maybe you were doing that in your own house, right? Yeah. So I wanted to make sure, and my sister wanted to make sure, that when we had to come up with a better way to discipline our kids so that we didn't repeat that mistake. And I think a lot of parents don't understand that, and they continue that trajectory, and then those kids pick up the same thing, and that they keep making the same mistakes.
Absolutely.
So the fact that you even acknowledged it, or the fact that you said, "I could have done better," what I've learned is sometimes let the kids know that.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things, I did therapy for a while, and the therapist said, "Do you realize when you did that with your kid that you were loving him conditionally?" And my intention is never to do that, always unconditional. And I didn't realize that. And after I hung up, I picked up the phone and I called him and I said, "Hey, do you remember when I did this?" And he said, "I do." And I said, "So I just learned that was conditional love. And I want you to know that that is never my intent."
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, I kind of picked up on that, but, I understand that we all make mistakes." And I said, "Well, I want to apologize for that mistake." And when you hear a parent apologize, sometimes it makes you human.
Oh, right? This is beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things I was learning as my marriage was coming apart at the seams was the extent to which my own emotional dysregulation contributed to the damage in our marriage. And yes, sometimes that emotional dysregulation, unfortunately, was paraded in front of, or sometimes toward, my children. Right. Yep. As I look back, I wince and cringe at some of that behavior. But in the last couple years of my marriage, when I was coming to terms with these things, yes, through a lot of therapy and a lot of self-reflection brought on by traumatic events, I started to meet my children at the level that you just described. There were times when I would go in there and I would say, "You know what? I wasn't my best self just now or yesterday or this morning or whatever it was. And I went, I'm sorry about that." And
Excellent.
And
how did they respond to that?
Well, this was interesting. Ellie's response, because she's the older one, and she's the one with whom I principally would have conversations like this, would often say, "Oh, it's okay." And I would say, "Well, hold on. I want you to hear me," because my concern about Ellie is she has this people-pleasing tendency, and I don't want that to come out. I want her to really hear me and be okay with not being happy with something I've said or done.
Right.
And understanding that that's okay to feel that way and to tell me, because she is very caught up now in not advocating for herself unless she feels like in doing so, she won't hurt anyone else's feelings and everyone around her will still be happy and safe. And it's not always that way. And sometimes you have to advocate for yourself in ways that are going to be uncomfortable and might upset some folks around you. And you got to be okay with that. And those are those moments when I could start to have that conversation with her.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And what advice can you give dads when it comes to situations like this?
Well, situations like the one I just described, I have to say that divorce can be a very triggering experience, especially for anyone given to emotional dysregulation. Now, you just described a violent environment in which you grew up. Well, so did I. Physically and emotionally and psychologically, all the things, okay? A lot of screaming, a lot of violence. And so not a lot of modeling for either of us for composure, emotional regulation, respect for your people who are depending on you for
Right.
love and support, right? And because the divorce experience can be triggering of the habits that we picked up from our parents, be it emotional dysregulation or other things, we have to be especially intentional and aware of the extent to which we're going to be prone to those triggers in the aftermath of divorce. And so I've learned, and believe me, I am 45 years old. It's taken me years and years to get to this point, and I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But I do believe I'm noticing this about myself now, that I've gotten to a point where I can catch myself before I get to a point at which I've lost control. And I'm much more patient with myself and those around me. And as easy as it would be to let the triggering effects of divorce just remove me from the best version of myself that I can be, I've been able to summon this degree of composure that is a really refreshing, and I'm noticing that the kind of consistency in my own behavior that is bringing to my children's lives is really beneficial. So that would be my advice to dads: is just be intensely, acutely heightened in your self-awareness.
As to how your actions
Absolutely.
are affecting the other two people
Absolutely.
or three people in the room.
Yeah, and the more you bring grace and patience to yourself,
Yeah.
the more you forgive yourself for things you did not know before your marriage came apart.
Right.
The more you are able to practice the kind of composure I preach. If you're not working on that, if you're not doing that work on yourself, I mean, you mentioned therapy. That is so crucially important. If you're not doing that work on yourself, man, you're not going to be able to show up for others. You got to show up for yourself first. You got to be willing to face yourself. You know.
There are a
yeah.
lot of divorce counselors out there now that are trying to show parents how to have better divorces. You might have tried group counseling or
Yes.
co-parent
Yes.
counseling. What I like about divorce counselors is that if it's not amicable, they try to figure out how to best get you guys to communicate, how to react around the children, how to make it as amicable as possible.
Yeah.
Because it might be bad between the two of you, but as bad as it is, there are these children that are looking at you and watching you, and this is what they're going to formulate their future life after, is how their parents are reacting.
That's horrifying, isn't it?
Right. So we have to remember that this is a breakup between two people,
Yeah.
but it's not two people. There's
Yeah.
other people in the room,
It's so
little people
important.
in the room.
So important.
And how do I, as you said, be the best of who I am
Yeah.
in front of those two?
Yeah. Oh, their
love that.
vulnerability is immeasurable,
Yeah.
Ron. And one of the questions we discussed before I came in today was, how did you tell your kids?
Right.
And we didn't really tell Blake because she was only 3 years old at the time. I didn't know how to walk a 3-year-old through a conversation like that. But Ellie was 9 at the time, and she definitely felt the blow of it. When I had to sit across the table from her and she started crying.
Was it you and your wife?
Both of us together.
Okay.
Because we were under the same roof there for months, even when it was weird and complicated, and we weren't entirely sure it was really over, and it was all this weird ambiguity. But at the moment we had that conversation with Ellie, I knew I needed to leave. I knew I needed to file for divorce, and so we did have that conversation with Ellie. She starts crying. Even as recently as a couple days ago, I was having a conversation with her that she prompted about meeting significant others of her parents now. And one of the things she was saying is, I said, Ellie, are you comfortable with that? Is this something
Right.
that you're? And she said, I will be comfortable with that if it's she named her mom and named her dad and said, if those are the significant others that we're talking, in other words, if mom and dad are getting back together,
Right,
then I'll be
right.
comfortable with it. And I'm like, oh wow, we're far away from
Yeah.
that, aren't we? But that moment, Ron, when she's crying in front of me and I'm realizing the emotional effects of this on this little girl, it helped illuminate for me how vulnerable a being we had in the midst of this drama and this chaos, and this upheaval in her life. It's not just an upheaval in ours, the adults. It's especially, I would argue, an upheaval in her life, and the implications of which are continue to play out as recently as like 48 hours ago when I'm having this conversation with her. So yes, it needs to be about the kids. For me, no matter what happened in the end of the marriage, no matter how difficult things were, no matter how bad things got, that sense of Ellie's vulnerability in the midst of this, her need for us to consistently show up for her, drives my behavior with her co-parent now, with her mom now.
One of the benefits that we offer through our association is 3 free mental health care. And I think it's so important at the time that not all children have handled it well. I think a majority of the children don't handle it well unless it's been a very lot of turmoil in the relationship. Have you ever tried therapy, or would it be an option, or do you think your child needs therapy at this point?
Great questions. I've been through a lot of therapy myself in the last couple of years. I did do some couples counseling before it was all over with my my now ex-wife, and I've broached the topic with Eliana. And Eliana, I don't have all the answers here, Ron, and I don't know what the answer is to this.
Right.
But when I brought that up to her, she became very defensive. I think she, unfortunately, and this is something I'll have to work through with her, because it can't be like this forever in her mind. I feel like she felt that my suggestion that we provide her with someone to talk to was an accusatory thing, and I was saying there's something wrong with her. Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, as we as adults understand, is very far from the truth.
Right.
The point is, we can't do this all by ourselves.
Right.
And that's why the service that you just provided is so important, because we just can't. I was just having this conversation I was having with someone not too long ago. How, in fact, I had a session with a little consultation with a therapist recently, and I told her I'm at a point at which I have to accept again that I can't get through all of this by myself, and that's why I'm having this conversation with you, therapist.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know I was 16 at the time when my parents told us they were getting divorced. They sat my sister and I down. She was 21. She had just got back from college, and they said they both sat us down and said, your mom and dad, your mom and I have decided we're going to separate. And we said, separate or divorce? And they said, divorce. And we both looked at each other and went, thank God. And they looked at us and they said, that was about 5 years too late. But, they're like, you're not upset? They're like, no, actually, we're pretty relieved.
That's great.
They fought a lot most of the time in Yiddish, so that's how I learned Yiddish. But they fought a lot, but they also were very loving towards each other. So it was this, it was, I guess, this passion and love and stuff like that. But it clearly wasn't working. And my mother, who came from Europe, had come into her own, and she had gone out and gotten her college degree well into her 40s. Became an interior designer, really came into her own from transitioning from a housewife to an interior designer, and feeling the independence and realizing that it was a 50-50 marriage and not a 20-80 type marriage where she was the at-home mom and dad was the provider.
Yeah.
And now she was also a provider, and it led to more disagreements, less understanding of each other.
Wow.
And it was tough,
Yeah.
even at 16. Especially as you get older, you begin to see things from a different perspective. So that when they finally did make the announcement, it was a relief. But they also chose that they weren't going anywhere. In other words, it was an amicable divorce. There wasn't a lot of fighting about assets or the division of the house and things of that nature. My father moved maybe 5 blocks away. He rented an apartment 5 blocks away because he wanted to be close to me. My sister, like I said, was off in college at the time. My dad had dinner twice a week. Could see each other whenever I wanted to. The one issue that did come up was I would sit with my mother and she would bitch about my dad. And then I would sit with my dad and he would bitch about my mother.
Yeah,
and it kept going back and forth for a while. And even though I was 16, it became pretty intense. And I did have an emotional breakdown at some point. And my mom realized it and called my dad over, and they sat me both down and said, hey, we're sorry.
Good.
Like, we should not be putting this pressure on us.
Exactly.
You were our sounding board, but that's not your responsibility.
Nope.
So that was a switch in their dynamic and in my dynamic with them as well. And I think it's important when you're in that process that you understand that the arguing, that the disagreements that you're having, if you can do it outside of the house, if you can realize that the two people, your children, how many there are being affected by what you're doing, come together as best as you can and try to tone it down.
Yeah.
Because this will have a long-term effect on them.
Yeah. I really want to seize on that very important point you just made about your parents using you as your sounding boards.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a book, the title of which literally is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That's the literal title of the book. It's a great book.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the book advises is that one of the forms of abuse of children is when parents use their children for the emotional support that they're supposed to be providing their kids. Our children are not our therapists. Our children are not there to provide us with emotional support. That's our job for them. We get our emotional support from other adults, from therapists, okay? We leave our kids out of that. And putting them in that position is terribly abusive of them, and can really screw them up for the long term. You can't do that. And so in a divorce scenario, when you're looking for someone to talk to, or, you're hurting around your kids, but wrestling within yourself to still be present for them, they are not the ones to lean on in that moment of weakness or vulnerability or whatever. You call a buddy, get your we all have our therapist on speed dial, don't we? I mean, there's got to be someone other than your kids to fill that need for you.
My sister told her therapist at one point that, we both started working at 14. And it was, at the time, for me, when I was 14, my dad was having some financial difficulties, and it was just, we were brought up with a lot of responsibilities. Sundays was house cleaning, Saturdays I was cutting the grass or cleaning the pool or washing the cars, and at 14 it was just natural for me to say, okay, how can I earn some extra money? And I actually started working at a dry cleaners as a cashier. That's how I learned how to do the actual pushing and doing change and all that kind of stuff back then. But my sister was telling the story to her therapist how she started at 14 and how she was self-supportive pretty much until she got to college. And the therapist pointed out that it was not her responsibility to be that parent. In other words, it wasn't okay because she had two parents that should have been parenting her.
Correct.
And that when she told me that, and I thought to myself, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because I don't think at 14, I know I had people at home that were responsible for me, but at 14 I had become so independent. Not that I think I could have lived on my own, of course, and made adult decisions at the time, but I had become more independent, which is not a bad thing. But I think by the time I got to 16, I had become so independent that when my father left, my mother thought I was now the husband.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that responsibility, even though I was now working someplace else, at 16 I was on the swim team at high school. I was in a Jewish youth group at the time, and I was politically involved with that. And then I also had school, and I had a job. I don't know how I graduated. My mother said years later, she said, well, when I realized I didn't have the most brilliant children, I made sure they were socially inclined. I mean, we were B students, all right? And they were good. They were good with us being B students. But it was true, though, because we were very socially inclined, and I think that might have been part of the way we escaped being home. But at the time when my father left, I took his position even at the kitchen table.
Wow.
And I remember one time the actual breakdown occurred when I had forgotten to take the garbage out. And she'd come home from work and she was badgering me about it, and that's when I had the emotional breakdown, and they realized they were putting too much pressure. So we have to remember as parents that we are there to parent our children. Our children are not there to parent us. And a lot of times when you get into that divorce situation, I think children feel they need to step up and they need to take care of mom, or they need to take care of dad.
Right.
And it's a very loving gesture.
Yes.
But that's not their job.
Correct.
And as much as you might have this turmoil with you and your partner, you have to remember you still parent these children. So you better figure out a way that you can co-parent responsibly to make sure that their mental health is okay, and that they are able to continue being children.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I think a lot of parents forget about that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate what you've done with your kids and how you and your wife or soon-to-be ex-wife have prioritized that they come first.
Yeah.
And that we have to figure this out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. One of the assurances I made Eliana in that moment when we were having that conversation with her was, look, Mommy and Daddy aren't going to be living under the same roof, but, not a lot else changes. You still have access to a huge support network in your family, lots of people who love you and will protect you. Your parents are still always going to be there to love you and protect you. And I think, has it gone perfectly? Probably not. But have we shown her that Her parents are still the same loving mom and dad she always had, whether or not they're living together anymore. I think so, and that'll always be at the top of our list of urgencies with our kids going forward.
Excellent. What type of support systems were out there for you?
Well, I leaned on family heavily
Okay.
because the circumstances that brought our marriage to an end were pretty painful, and I really I didn't know who to turn to. There was a moment when I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to get out.
Right.
And so the kinds of support that I enjoyed in those moments. My sister said, "Why don't you just come share the condo with me up in Tarpon?" And I did that for about 15 months. I only moved out 6-7 weeks ago, and I'm living. I have a place here in St. Pete. I'm back in St. Pete, which I'm excited about. Removing myself from that environment thrust me in a situation in which I had to expand my social network. I started finding myself in different social environments and meeting different people and giving myself permission to really pursue these friendships. And that has been amazing. I've met other men who are going through the same stuff. Without even seeking it out. It's odd how, as the rhythm of your life changes, the different presences find their way in. And so I've made some really close friends in the last year and a half that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Are these single men?
Yeah.
That are divorced men?
Yeah. And
the stories you guys share?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You think your wife was bad? Let me share with mine. Everybody's trying to one up.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I have to say, I am really. Here's the thing. This is something that I think about a lot. I think if we sit here and blame our spouses for everything that went wrong, we are cheating ourselves. We're not being honest with ourselves. I'm a big believer increasingly in what some folks, in forums that I follow call radical responsibility. Even if those who are fully aware of the circumstances under which my marriage ended can encourage me to point the finger, and that's fine. But what worked for me was to really take some assessment of myself. Think about what decisions I made that brought me to this point in my life. That's what I have control over.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of, for lack of a better word, there's something pathetic about constantly whining about your ex. Focus on yourself.
Correct.
What did you do that you can reflect on? What are you going to do going forward?
Yeah.
How are you going to grow from these experiences?
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things.
Yeah.
So when I'm out with my buddy, one in particular comes to mind who's gone through a divorce. We really mostly talk about how we're trying to find our footing, how we're trying to find our way forward, and sharing our difficulties in that regard. I think we've both made peace with what's happened, and that takes time. I mean, we're a couple years removed from the earthquake,
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of been the focus, and I think that's what's made those experiences so much more rewarding than a kind of sewing circle environment in which we just get together to like knit and trade gossips about our exes.
Yeah. They always say when you start dating, you'd always like that date to talk to your ex to see.
Yeah,
Oh,
man. Get both sides of that story, baby. Yeah.
Well, I like that you've let that go, and that you take the personal accountability for what you did. I know I call mine the undivorced because I wasn't married, but I was with the person for 14 years. It was toxic. It was verbally abusive. But what I began to do 2 years before I ended the relationship is not only focus on what I wanted in my next partner, but how I wanted to be loved differently, what I was willing to take. I started looking into myself, like, why did I put myself in a conditionally loving relationship for 14 years?
Right.
Why was that okay?
That's what I'm talking about.
Not the fact that he loved me conditionally, but why did I allow myself to be loved conditionally? Right. And that was a whole other. That was numerous therapy sessions and a lot of journaling on my part. You said you love to write, I love to journal.
Yeah.
And I pour my thoughts out on these journals, and what kept coming up was, well, because that's how you were loved growing up.
Yes.
Dad told me at a very young age, don't tell me you love me, show me you love me.
Yeah.
there's some point to that.
Yeah.
But you don't say it to a 6-year-old.
Correct. That's so well said.
Because the 6-year-old is like, what do I have to do to earn my parents'
Yeah.
love?
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah.
So let me go do more things.
Yeah.
Like, look, Daddy, look what I'm doing. Look, Mom, look what I'm doing, right? So that you hopefully, that's what it interpreted me to understand.
Yeah.
And now I suddenly am in my first long-term relationship in my early 20s with the goal set prior to me coming out was to graduate college, find the woman, get married, have 3 kids, all that and everything. I have a house by the time I'm 25 years old, and I came out at 21, and suddenly I didn't have the wife, but at 23, 24, I had my first long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could do was take what I learned growing up and apply it to my adulthood in my relationship. So as much as it was toxic and it was verbally abusive and we were on again, off again, and I accepted a lot. It was internally when I looked at it, I realized it was a lot of it was not my fault, but things that the universe was trying to force me to look at internally to say, hey, it's okay for you to be loved conditionally.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
Like, look what you did for this person and look what you did for yourself. How are you going to make that different in your new relationship?
Oh, this is such beautiful stuff. This is so well said.
Yeah.
Because exactly, you bring a curiosity to the circumstances that you consented to.
Correct.
In your marriage or your
Correct.
long-term relationship.
Right.
And you know, are you settling for crumbs? I did.
Right.
Well, I did that.
Right.
This partner that I had came by her flaws just as honestly as I came by my flaws.
Right.
And it was no one was ever forcing me to agree to the terms that her flaws, you know, brought into the relationship.
Right.
I made that decision.
Right.
Well, why? Well, then you get into family of origin therapy sessions, and you think about, well, how was I loved as a kid? And
I wasn't blaming my parents.
no, it's not.
It
Blame
just
isn't
was.
even the point.
Right.
Curiosity is the point.
Correct.
Okay, so what happened back there that shaped me into the kind of person that would agree to these terms, this conditional love, as you just put it? That's when you start to grow from past experiences. That's when you start to focus on what's truly within your control. That's such powerful stuff, and that work never ends.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even I 5 years I was single. I did a lot of dating, but because I became so hyper focused on what I needed, which it's interesting when I've sat with friends that have not had long term relationships or have had short term relationships, and I say to them, "What do you want?" They give me a list of what I don't want.
Wow.
Well, I don't want this, and I
Wow.
certainly they can't do this, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, great, great. What do you want? That my friends don't like me sometimes because I'm such an intense listener that I call them on their stuff.
Good.
So when I say, tell me what you want, they sit there and they stare at me. And I'm like,
Isn't that interesting?
that's why you haven't found what you want.
Yeah.
So I knew what I didn't want. I had therapy on that. What did I want? And that's what I journaled about. And so when I would go on dates, I could write a book on this because a lot of times they
Sure.
were hysterically funny.
Yeah.
Is I would sit with them, and especially if it was somebody I'd wanted to go out with for a long time, and I began to do an interview process after a while, and they didn't know they were being interviewed, but it's called being intent on your conversation. And I would say, what's your longest term relationship? And if the guy was in his mid-40s and he said, oh, I don't know, about 6 months, I'd say, hey, you know what? It's great knowing you. I'll get the check. Because I got news. It ain't the other person. It's you.
Yeah, there's something called a common denominator there, big guy. Yeah.
If you're in your 40s and you haven't had a 5-year relationship, I'm not condoning, I'm not saying that anybody who hasn't is bad.
No, of course.
Don't get me wrong. But if you're telling me you can't find the right person and the longest term relationship you've had is 6 months and you're in your 40s and 50s, maybe there's some self-reflection.
There's a lot of volatility there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think if you do know what you want and you are focused on that and you take your bad experiences and figure out what did I do and how can I make it better, it makes your next relationship better.
Yeah.
It makes who you're picking as a partner better. When I finally found my husband, I sat with him at breakfast for 2 hours and everything went off. It was like, wow, he's stable. He's. It wasn't about. I didn't need somebody to be a doctor or a scientist, but I wanted to know that they liked what they were doing, that they had responsibility. It didn't matter what their upbringing was, as long as they were making better decisions moving forward than they did in the back. And he just met that, and it was because I was focused on finding him. And yes, throughout our relationship, we've both had to work on how we spoke to each other.
Yeah.
because when it comes to communicating, you have this effect a lot of times where I'm saying this and you're saying that, we're both saying the same thing, but we're hearing different things. And that was our biggest thing. And we went to therapy about that, is like, how can I communicate? Because I have my old school way of communicating and he has his way of communicating. How can we make that blend? And we worked on it.
Yeah.
But when you find the right person, it's always something you have to work on, but you don't have to find it challenging every day.
Yeah.
I always say, put it into percentages. Is your relationship 90-10, 80-20, 60-40, 50-50? When it gets down to 60-40 and 50-50, you got some work to do.
Yeah.
It should be, and again, I'm not a therapist, I'm not
Sure.
an expert on this, in my opinion, my humble opinion, 80-20. Because you're going to have those crappy days.
Yeah.
Right? But you got to remember that person has your back.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he and I get into arguments every now and then, we have to remember it comes from a place of love, and we're just not communicating clearly enough, because I don't mean to hurt you.
Yeah.
And I still have some PTSD from the previous relationship. So he might do something and I start getting all upset. He's like, hey, I'm not your ex.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
But this is what's frustrating me. And you have to be able to be humble enough to sit back and go, well, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It's not that they're coming at you from a place of you're wrong. They're coming at you from a place of I don't understand, or this isn't working. And you have to be able to humble yourself to say, okay, so how can we try this differently?
Yeah. Oh.
What do you need?
Exactly. Humble yourself is so important, because humility, I think, underpins the most productive communication that it can occur between two partners.
Yep.
That kind of humility before your partner. There's these moments you're talking about of like expressing your needs. I think there's a lot of fear of abandonment that prevents people from advocating for themselves.
Absolutely.
From saying,
What would I do if I wasn't with him?
Exactly.
I mean, even all the songs on the radio.
Oh.
Like, you break my heart. Everything.
Absolutely.
Everything into
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this
yeah.
is disgusting.
Yeah, I know.
That's called enabling. Let's turn that channel there.
Oh man, it's so true. It's so true. I think about that. The self-abandonment that I practiced in my marriage caused a lot of problems for both of us. It never works.
Right.
The more you try to abandon yourself to appease everyone around you, to appease your partner, to keep the peace, the farther down the road of ruin you're traveling.
Yeah.
You must be assertive enough and fearless enough and bold enough and humble enough and self-respecting enough and respecting of your partner enough to say, this is what I need, this is what I want. Advocate for yourself.
Right.
The thing is, and this is kind of the elephant in the room of that conversation, you have to do it with emotional regulation. You
Yes,
can't
of course.
flip out,
Right.
if it goes haywire.
Right.
That's the test of a relationship, is that you can have those honest, forthright conversations, like you're saying when you're listening intently to a friend and calling them out on things. You're able to do that and know they're still going to be your friend when they get out of bed the next morning.
I want them to do that with me.
Exactly.
Listen,
Exactly.
Because then you got to sit back and go, huh.
Yeah, man. That's it.
When I was much younger, people would say, you're very cocky. And I'd be like, really? Like, I remember when my roommate in college told me that. He was a 6'2" football-looking guy who was a biology. He was in biology, but he was some kind of very specific scientist. And I'd walk into his room and he'd have all the scientific formulas on his walls and stuff like that. And he says, you're very cocky. And I'd be like, so I think you're freaking brilliant. And how am I not conveying that? Like, what is it that I'm doing that makes you think that, when what the truth is, I think you're freaking brilliant. Like, my mind doesn't go where your mind goes. Yeah. And it wasn't until I asked my former partner, when I do that, grab my knee or grab my arm and point it out. And when he started making that connection, I realized I put the action with my words and realized, oh, I don't want to be that person. I'm going to change that. Yeah. But I had to have somebody point it out to me. So that's why I'm saying, when my friends speak to me, tell me the truth. If I'm doing something, I might get pissed, but then I have to really sit back and go, do I do that? Yeah. That's not how I want to appear or come across. That took some training, and that took some years of self-reflection and who you want to be as a human being. Yeah. And how you want to come across. Yeah. And I always say, show me who I am to other people. Because
That's beautifully said.
I want to make sure that I'm that person who I think I am. Right?
Yeah.
And I think we need to be able to convey that to our partners.
Yeah.
Is like, who do I want to be for my partner?
Yes.
How do I want to show up?
Yeah, there's a video. There's a guy named Wayne Baker on YouTube that does a video about this idea of telling yourself that you married the wrong person.
Right.
And he turns it around and says, what about asking if you were modeling the love that you wanted to receive from your partner?
Right.
Were you being the best lover or partner, wife or husband that you could be? And if we're bringing that humility to that question, invariably the answer is no.
Right, exactly. I could have been better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And so now, this is one of the experiences I have if I'm in a interacting with a significant other these days. That is top of mind for me is how am I modeling the love that I wish to receive? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Ron, you have to bring so much, at least I do. Maybe this is just me, but there's a huge degree of intentionality you have to bring to that every day, every moment with this person.
Yep.
Now, can that be exhausting? Sure, but are the rewards immense? Yeah, and
Does it have to be exhausting?
See, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
And I think that, and this is what I've been experiencing more recently. If you've given yourself over to this idea of the importance of modeling the love that you wish to receive, it starts to happen more and more effortlessly over time as you practice that mindset. So yeah, that's these are all the kinds of lessons that divorce itself can impart if we bring humility to a very painful circumstance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you think in your new relationship? Well, first of all, have you given yourself enough time between your former relationship and possibly a new one to allow yourself to self-reflect, to be able to have a healthier relationship moving forward and making a better choice in partners?
It's such an important question. And again, this is probably not right for everyone, but in my situation, I had to basically have nothing to do with the opposite sex for at least a year, because I just needed a breather, man. Yeah. Oh man, I just it was a lot, and I needed to meet myself. People would say, well, you'll the right person will come along, and I would think maybe, but I need to figure out who I am first. Exactly. Like, who am I? Right. Before I think about the right person coming along, I got to get right, know? So yeah, it's interesting because the more that time went on that I gave myself the space to sort of become my own best companion, the easier it was to start just sort of meeting other people.
Right.
And it more recently happened so effortlessly that it's been almost shocking to me because I've not always been that way, but I am so comfortable in my skin now. And I think a large part of that is the time I gave myself instead of rushing into something with someone else, some kind of rebound, or using that person as your numbing agent.
Right. I don't want to be alone. I can't be alone.
And I've had friends. Listen, Ron, the contrast for me has been divorced male straight friends I've had who ran right into relationships with women after a painful divorce, and it turned out to be disastrous. And they would tell me things like, "Oh, I think she's the one," and I'd be thinking, it's kind of soon, You've known her for 8 weeks.
Yeah, could be your ex's sister. That's how close it is.
Yeah.
Right?
And I just, in the back of my mind, I thought, you're saying this because you desperately need to believe that it's just going to be this easy.
And you're afraid of being alone.
Absolutely, Ron. Yeah. Absolutely. And listen, I understand.
Yeah.
Because one of the most terrifying questions I asked myself after divorce, which is I'm sure a question that man or woman or straight or not, whatever, in the aftermath of divorce, we say, oh my God, am I going to be alone for the rest of my life? I grappled with that question. And in my case, I found some videos to this effect. I consume a lot of content in this space. This is one guy who said, what if the answer is just like, that's okay?
Yeah. That's what
it turns out that's fine.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I got to that point. And it's when I got to that point that it became easier than ever for people to just find their way into my life. And I'm really grateful for that, and I don't need it.
Yeah.
I want it. I welcome it. But need is a toxic mindset, in my opinion. And if you get to the point where you need this person in your life, Then you're more given to abandoning yourself. You're more given to accepting crumbs and conditional love that you were talking about earlier. So yeah, I think to answer your question, Ron, it's important to give yourself time and space, not to rush into something else. I don't think that works.
And if you want to rush into something else, why? What is it?
Exactly.
What's going on inside that you need to have that?
And that's that curiosity you have to bring to your impulses, and your behaviors and thoughts and actions. Yeah.
I know that after I broke up with mine, 6 months later I was in a relationship, and even though the person looked different, it was the same person as my ex. But I made I was able to see it quicker. And I'm like, wait a minute, something's totally familiar about this.
Yeah, we leave toxic relationships with X-ray vision, don't we? Because we can see it from a mile away now.
And you're like, oh, wait a minute, this feels the same. I don't want this anymore. And so, I was able to pull out of it. And like I said, give myself that 5-year period of just, figuring out what makes me happy, buying my own house for the second time. First time I bought it in my 20s, second time after the relationship, how I wanted to decorate the house. I got my foster son, who was 13 years old at the time, because I wanted to have a child. And I wanted to pour back into a child that was already alive and needed a loving home. So my relationship with my son was developed before I got back together with my ex. I got involved in organizations that I was passionate about. And then I got back together with my ex, and not my son, of course, but the stuff that had started making improvements in my life fell back.
Fascinating. Wow.
Because I was once again in that mindset of being in that toxic relationship. When that ended, I redeveloped that, and I became more passionate about finding what it is that I want, who I want to hang out with, who I want my friends to be, because they're a reflection of who you are.
Yeah.
And my career, and not just my career, but what's my social life look like? Well, how am I giving back to the community? What am I doing that it makes me comfortable with myself?
Yes.
Because if I'm comfortable with myself, who I allow in has to be comfortable with myself. And if that person isn't, I put in my journal before I met my husband is, I want that person to be okay with me not being okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That I'm going to do something that's going to piss him off.
Yes.
And I remember we were sitting on the couch one time and watching TV, and I got up and these words vomited out of my mouth. And it was horrible what I said. And I don't know why I said it. And I turned to him and said, wow, I don't know why I just said that. That is not at all how I feel.
Yeah.
The ex would have taken out a frying pan and hit me over the head. I knew I was with the right person because he said, that's okay. I get it. We all say things.
That's so powerful.
Because I recognized it immediately, like, that's not how I feel. This is the old me pouring out. I am sorry.
Yeah.
Right? That 5-year period, had it not happened, I would not have been able to say that to him.
Yeah.
So give yourself a break from the time you've got all this toxicity that you've just left. Allow yourself to figure it out before you jump in. I don't care what they look like, how sweet they are. Figure out yourself before, and it gives you that healthier relationship the second or third time in.
This is such powerful stuff, Ron. I totally agree with that. And in particular, I love what you're saying essentially about, being patient with one another's flaws. Yeah. Especially in those beautiful moments you described with your prior relationship when you said, tap me on the knee when I'm being this way. Yeah. Well, those moments were beautiful moments that you had because, like Leonard Cohen says in a poem, I have not been denied the full measure of beauty, nor have you, Ron, because that was the full measure of beauty presenting itself to you, because in those moments you had a partner that was willing to fight with you toward a better relationship. I had to leave my marriage when I realized I didn't have that. Okay. But now what I understand is exactly what you're saying. That's the kind of love that I court now is someone who is as patient with my flaws as I am with the others. Someone who's willing to get down in those trenches with me and find a way through those difficult moments that are absolutely inevitable. And are you bringing your best self, not to the tranquil, peaceful moments between the two of you, but are you bringing your best self to the trying moments between the two of you? Correct. And that's when you have to summon the all sorts of important capacities. I, again, think chiefly among them is emotional regulation.
So how was your Father's Day?
It was wonderful.
Tell me about
it. So they were supposed to be with their mom that weekend. This happened on Mother's Day too. And so we communicated, and it wasn't very complicated. We just shoot a couple texts and figure, pick them up for a few hours that afternoon. And we're like, okay, great. And we just made it happen. It was easy.
Yeah.
And so I scooped my children up, and I was with them for a few hours that day. It was so funny. I went there with these, maybe we're going to cook together at my place, or I'll take them to see this movie, How to Train Your Dragon, had just come out, right? And
I want to see that.
yeah. But Blake, my 5-year-old, was just ready to tear the world in if I did not take them to Great Explorations. That was going to happen. And so, what I realized is, Father's Day isn't about doing what Dad wants. It's about finding the joy in the occasion, which is Father's Day. And what I did was I was able, and your kids have no idea you're doing this, but watching Blake run around that place thrilled was the greatest Father's Day gift I possibly could have received that day. It almost brings me to tears. Just watching her be alive, and me just doing this simple thing and when I took them there, I realized Dad's got in free on Father's Day. I was like, hey, it's in the budget too.
Did they have wine for you as well? Go play, we're good. Yeah.
No, it was great, that was just so cool. Just experiencing their liveliness is one of those hidden secret pleasures of parenthood.
Yeah.
And life afforded me that on Father's Day this month, and I was really grateful for that.
I didn't get to have a 5-year-old. I got a 13-year-old, but I now have a granddaughter who's 5. We've got her when she was just born. So seeing that process and getting those moments of enjoyment, just sitting back and watching her at great exploration, or having a great time in the pool, or the things that come out of her mouth.
Yes, I know.
It's like,
I know.
Girl, where'd you get that from? Which one of your aunts, uncles, or nieces? And, But there is that fact of just being able to sit back and watching them and just see the innocence, the beauty. Everything is so different for them at 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to screw it up even though you're
exactly. You're so right. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because the other thing that occurs to me in those moments is just the immensity and the fragility of this responsibility.
Yeah.
It's so easy to screw that up.
Yeah.
And so you have to be always intentional about who you're on stage every moment you're in front of your kids, I believe.
Yep.
And I say all this with the caveat, which you mentioned at the start of this conversation, which is so important. Give yourself grace. Forgive yourself. Be patient with yourself. You're not going to be great every moment with them. Yeah. But having those honest communications with your kids about moments in which you failed yourself in front of them. Yeah. Sometimes I've said it just like that. Ellie will bring stuff up to me about times when I had a tantrum or whatever garbage it was I was parading in front of my kids in a given moment, and I've actually said to her, I was not my best self in that moment. I'm sorry. I've just said it just like that. My parents never said stuff like that to me.
What was her reaction?
I could tell that she found it to be kind of bracing, like, wow, okay, and I think the more she hears that from me, the more used to it she gets now. The more appreciative she becomes of that. What's most important to me is that when I respond that way, I'm giving her permission to criticize me. I'm giving her permission to tell me when I really kind of screwed up, when I wasn't at my best for her or be for her, because she's got to feel like she can have hard conversations with me in which she advocates for her needs. Because if she can't do that with me, Ron, she's not going to do it in her adulthood. Yep. She's going to be trampled upon. She's going to be taken advantage of. And all the while, she's going to be wondering, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make everyone happy? Yep. And she's going to be this people pleaser who's getting, trampled on by life. That's not what I want for her. But guess what? That starts with me.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not modeling that for her, I have failed her.
Yep.
And I feel like there are some past failures in this regard on my part that I'm trying to reverse now in my life as a single dad.
I say give yourself grace.
Yeah.
We're not perfect human
Right.
beings. But if we recognize it, we become better.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Let's see. I really appreciate this conversation. It's fantastic.
It's been great.
And we're going to wrap this up. But what are some final words or advice you can give to dads who are in the process of divorce, or just dads who have already gotten divorced?
I'm so glad you asked, because this is the question I was thinking about the most on my way over here today. One of the most painful things for me was divorce challenged my identity, because my identity pre-divorce was I was a father, I was a lover, I was a partner, I was a husband. And when the environment of the marriage is ripped out from under you, you're left standing alone wondering, who am I now?
Right.
You're asking yourself these really foundational questions that undergird your being. I mean, these are earthquakes that
your identity is
oh my
just
God,
taken away.
So who am I now?
Right.
Be patient with that, because I have found now that much of who you were pre-divorce, you're still that person now. You're still a partner to their mom, to their dad, whatever the situation is. You're not living under the same roof. You don't have that person's ring on your finger anymore. But you're still, if you're approaching this like adults, you're still that person's partner.
Right.
You are co-parents. You're certainly still a parent to your kids.
Yep.
And when they're with you, you're the same figure in their eyes that you were when you lived under the same roof with your partner. One of the warmest memories Ellie ever shared with me, which, yes, was heartbreaking because of the context, but it's something that she enjoys now when she's alone with me in my new house, is, basically what she was saying is, what I miss when you and Mommy lived together was when I would get up in the morning, I always heard you sort of clanging pans in the kitchen, getting breakfast and lunches ready for us. And I could smell the food cooking, and stuff like that. And now that's the same experience that I can replicate for her, despite the fact that so much, in her mind at least, has changed in her life.
Right.
So you're really much the same person. Your identity hasn't been extinguished by divorce. Know that. That's one of the ways in which we can be patient with ourselves as we're going through it or on the other side of it.
I love it. I guess one more question I had
Sure.
that I thought of just now is, when you repartner, how are you presenting that to your kids?
This is becoming an increasingly interesting question in my life. I had this. Okay. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is introducing a partner to my children's lives only for that partner to eventually go away. Because we don't have crystal balls.
Right.
We can tell each other, I'm not going to leave you. I'm always going to be here for all the things we say to each other when things are okay.
Yeah.
But you just never know.
Yeah.
And I haven't had this conversation with Ellie yet. And Blake is almost 6 now, so it is going to be a conversation with her too. I think I don't know if this is right or wrong, Ron, but I think I might need to just say, Ellie, I don't know if this person's going to be around forever.
Right.
But this is the person that's here now. This is a person that has expressed an interest in meeting you and has told me how cute you are and all of this stuff, right? And when I get to a place at which I am comfortable introducing this person into their lives, it's going to have to be first a conversation with their mom.
Right.
Because that's what I would want from their mom.
Yeah.
Because I really feel like we need to afford one another the opportunity to establish some ground rules as to what is and is not acceptable in this new person's interactions with our children. And then it's a conversation with my kids. And then thirdly, we actually have the experience of meeting this person. So that's how I'm thinking about going about it when the time comes. Starts with a conversation with a partner. Be honest with your kids about the possibility that it's not someone that's going to be around forever, because, lastly, Ron, one of my Ellie's best friends has a single mom, hardworking, really impressive person, who unfortunately, she had this relationship with a guy that did they become engaged at one point? He was there for 6-8 months that we would hang out with them and this guy, and he would hang out with their kids. I would watch him interact with her kids, and these kids are already abandoned by their biological father. So they've dealt with a lot of abandonment by male figures in their life, and which I think has been especially painful for her daughter, who's Ellie's best friend. And unfortunately, this guy ended up abandoning them too. And that
Sounds like mom's repeating it.
Quite possibly. And that is the biggest concern I have in this context. I don't want my children having to go through a succession of of situations in which they've emotionally bonded with this significant other of mine, and then all of a sudden, hey, that she's gone, and then here comes the next person. I think there's a recklessness to that that can't be healthy for my kids, and so I don't have the answer as to how to navigate that, but that's a chief concern of mine.
Yeah, I think my story's a little different. I think I was 18. Let's see, 21 when I met my stepmother. My dad took me, the company he was working with was taking their top producers to Italy. And they asked my dad, do you want to join us? And my dad said, can I bring my son? So we all went this great excursion to Italy, and my stepmother was there, who I didn't know who she was at the time. And I sneezed, and she said, goes in tight. And I looked at her and I went, I like you. We're going to be friends. And she was hysterical, and I, the more I spent time with her, the more I liked her. And I'd go back to my room with my dad. I'd be like, "Why aren't you asking her out? Like, this is a perfect match for you." And he's like, "Well, I know her ex-husband." I'm like, "So, but they're exes. Her ex-husband is here on the trip with her. I mean, clearly they have a relationship like you and Mom do. Ask her out." And he was like, So we get back to Miami, and I said, "Did you ask Iris out? Did you ask her out?" He's like, "Nah." I said, "Did you ask her?" I kept pushing and pushing, and finally asked her out. And they ended up spending 20 years together. So it was a better relationship. Unfortunately, it did eventually end in divorce because my dad ended up repeating an old pattern that he did. But for many years, it was a much healthier, much better relationship. But I had established the relationship with her before he did, which I thought was hysterical.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Wow. I hadn't even considered that possibility.
And I did call her. Like I felt like to some extent, she was that mother that I was supposed to be with. Because that's how well we got along and how much love there was between the two of us. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother.
Sure.
But she and I were almost a better match for a mother-son type relationship than my own mother was. And I could see that it was a better match for my father.
Yeah.
Again, he ended up repeating old patterns. So it's interesting how these new relationships can come to be sometimes.
Yeah. And those old patterns, man. Here's the thing. I don't know what it is like to be an alcoholic because fortunately I am not one. Right. However, the context comes to mind because I feel like our old patterns are addictions that we have to guard against every waking minute of our lives. And as soon as we let that guard down, it's like, as the alcoholics I've known have said to me, they don't have another drink because it could be the rabbit hole down which they slip into oblivion again. Well, our old patterns are those rabbit holes that could pull us into oblivion again. If we're not bringing that intentionality to them every waking minute of our lives, that's how it has to be. You got it. That's the work. It's but it's the rest of your life.
Correct.
It
never stops.
Yes.
Well, this is great stuff. I really appreciate you coming down.
Thank you for having me in, Ron.
Today.
This is wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just want to remind everybody that if you are interested in joining NASDF, it's nasdf.org. You will see a ton of benefits in there that is worth well over $4,000, well worth the $19 a month that we are taking as a membership. Our benefits will continue to increase as our membership grows. So if you're part of it now, you're just going to see more and more additions coming. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to thank you for being here today. Please join us again for our next podcast. Appreciate you.